Wake up. Is total honesty good for relationships? Is there such a thing as being too honest? Does honesty mean sharing every little detail? How can you be honest without hurting your partner? And how realistic is it to be 100% honest in a relationship? I'm gonna answer all of these questions right now. So can you be too honest in a relationship? Most people will tell you that honesty is key in a relationship. It is. But it's also common wisdom that there is such a thing as being too honest. In a relationship, I don't think that's true. It's a misunderstanding. When we tell ourselves, I can't tell her the truth about that, I'll hurt her feelings. 99 out of 100 times, that is a story, a justification our mind creates in order to not deal with conflict and discomfort. We're afraid, plain and simple. So you can't be too honest, but you can be too open. Here's the thing. Honesty and openness are not the same thing. In fact, it's easy to be completely honest as long as you're completely closed, that is, not open. But that's not a good foundation for a relationship, is it? So here's how to look at it. Think of it as two dials. There is a dial that controls openness, and there's a dial that controls honesty. So openness is how much of your inner world you share. And honesty is how accurately you share it. So if you crank the openness dial up to 100, honesty becomes almost impossible. Why is that? Because no one could survive if every single thought, impulse, or attraction in their head was broadcast to their partner. No one. Full mind reading would end any relationship. So the real goal isn't to be honest about everything. It is to set the openness dial to the highest possible setting you can, where you can still remain completely honest. So honesty always comes first. Openness is negotiable. That leads us to the second question. Does honesty mean sharing every little detail? No, it doesn't. Honesty first and foremost means not lying. And why is that important? Well, there's a reason our brains evolved this way. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, honesty builds trust, and trust is what keeps two people together long enough for them to raise children that survive. A partner who can't be trusted threatens your survival and the survival of your offspring. So some of our ancestors had their bullshit meter set to max, and they had more offspring and better survival odds than the other ancestors. And since we inherited these traits, we are in a sense allergic to lies. And this tendency is so powerful that you can actually see traces of it in most, if not all, cultures on planet Earth. That's also why honesty matters so much more than radical openness. I'm Asger Fallman, and this channel is all about evolutionary relationship psychology. If that sounds like you, please subscribe and join us over on School. Link below, I'll see you there. And just think about it this way. So imagine you meet a stranger at a party. He starts talking. Is that your girlfriend? Man, she has a nice ass. Yeah, my wife cheated on me with my cousin. Yeah, he also owes me money, like 900 bucks. I didn't shower before I came here. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you telling me all this? The natural reaction is to just get the hell away from a person like this, right? You see the problem here? This guy is in fact 100% honest. But when we pair that with too much openness, the results are just absurdity. You're appalled by this, right? You want to get away from this guy. And that mechanism actually works the same in a relationship. So here's an example. Your partner has almost certainly slept with others before you, right? But does that mean that you want to know every single little detail about every single encounter they ever had? Yes, I was wearing my yellow top, the one I wore last weekend at your parents', remember? Oh my God, I was so wet when he, stop! No normal human being could bear hearing all these details, because now every time you see her yellow top, you're reminded of her in all these sexual situations, right? Or something else that's yellow, or any of her tops for that matter. And before you know it, your relationship is just over. You're caught in this spiral of negative thinking and anxiety. So if you think this is brutal honesty, you're confusing the two concepts, honesty and openness. So no, being honest does not mean sharing every little detail. Okay, so how can you be honest without hurting your partner? So personal anecdote here. When I first met my first wife, she asked me early in the relationship, hey, I always wanted a relationship where both parties were like 100% open and 100% honest. What do you say? You want to do that? And I thought about it for a while and I thought, that sounds great. So I said yes. But the truth is, we couldn't do it. It totally backfired on us. Every stray thought, every uncomfortable detail, the other person could always ask about anything, and then you would be forced to answer with all the details. And this would obviously make the other person upset. And we took it way too far. Eventually, we ended up sharing the entire list of everyone we had both slept with, including all details of every encounter. And oddly, this was kind of freeing in a sense, but not in the way we meant it to be. In the way that after we were done, we both knew definitively this relationship is over. But this agreement we had made was so extreme that at one point we eventually both started lying to each other, simply because we had to. We had put ourselves in a situation where being honest would spell the end of our relationship, because we had also decided to be open, fully open. Both are impossible. So the problem wasn't actually honesty. The problem is that we were trying to max out both dials at the same time. So what should we have done? How can you be honest without hurting your partner? The trick is, first and foremost, to agree to be honest, as close to 100% as possible. And by that I mean, never tell your partner a direct lie. And the way to do that without hurting your partner is to agree with them about the openness level that you're both comfortable with. And the challenging part here is actually not on your partner, it's on you. You need to figure out how much detail you are comfortable with. And you need to communicate that to your partner before the situation occurs. So each of you need to communicate to the other person what level the openness dial should be set to. I think a good default value is roughly 50%. The thing is, you can always crank it up later. But if you set it too high from the get-go, there's no going back, right? You can't take back a stream of hurtful facts you just told your partner. So err on the side of non-openness. This sounds counterintuitive, but just understand that the reason you do this is because you need to keep the honesty dial as close to 100 as you possibly can. So how realistic is it to be 100% open with your partner? Well, that's the good news here. It's actually quite realistic. If you understand that openness and honesty are related, but ultimately two different things, it's very possible. It does depend on how emotionally mature you both are. When I was very young, for example, I didn't understand the necessity of honesty in a relationship. I would typically have a girlfriend, but always try to hook up with other women at the same time. And I would tell my best friend all the details, but I just didn't feel that moral imperative to be honest with my girlfriend. After all, she might get mad at me if I told her that I made out with another girl this weekend, right? So it wasn't until my late teens or early 20s or so that I realized how wrong this was. We don't even have to say it's wrong in a moral sense. It's also just in a practical sense not doable. It's not a foundation that you can build a relationship on. I think this goes hand in hand with the stages of our brain development. And some people may develop at different paces than others, and other people again are just chronically immature. But as always, you have to have a chat with your significant other about how you can set your openness dial to a level you can both feel safe with. It is worth noting that honesty is a non-negotiable in a relationship. But when it comes to openness, you can actually have an individual preference. You can tell your partner that you would like a little less openness from them than they want from you. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you know yourself well enough to know that you're pretty sensitive when it comes to a specific topic and that you don't want any details about their sexual past, for example, but they don't feel the same way, you can simply set the dial to two different values, as long as the honesty dial remains to 100 for both of you. So let's just sum everything up here. The more open you are, the harder it actually becomes to stay honest. That's why total honesty sounds great, but in practice, it's confused for total openness, that is total disclosure, and then it destroys a relationship. At the end of the day, no relationship can survive full transparency. Nobody wants every single unfiltered thought spoken out loud. But every relationship depends on honesty. So the art is this: dial openness down just enough so that honesty can remain absolute. That's the balance. That's how you keep honesty alive. Thanks for listening. Cheers.